So, we had the 2-year anniversary of AEW Dynamite, and it kicked off with an 8-man tag team match between the Super Elite and the team of Bryan Danielson, Christian Cage, and Jurassic Express. And the Elite had a pretty smart plan where they divided and conquered. Basically, the Young Bucks took out Christian Cage on the outside with an indie taker, and towards the end of the match, Luchasaurus was tagged in and he came in hot and took out all members of the Elite. But eventually the numbers game caught up to him when Cole once again used a low blow behind the ref's back, and the Super Elite all took out Luchasaurus, and Bryan Danielson was also taken out by a triple super kick, and the Super Elite finally finished things off in the ring with a 4-way V-trigger on Jungle Boy to pin him for the win. And then CM Punk was in the ring to make an announcement, and CM Punk basically played to the crowd and explained his history in Philly, and he offered to buy everybody Philly cheesesteaks, just like he bought everybody in Chicago ice cream bars upon his return. And I mean, I thought he would have learned his lesson after the ice cream bars, because if you watch Renee Paquette's podcast, Oral Sessions, CM Punk revealed that he paid for about 15,000 ice cream bars, which definitely adds up to take a pretty penny out of your allowance. But anyways, CM Punk basically challenged Daniel Garcia for a match on Rampage, and then before he left, Punk took off his Jordans and gave them to a young fan sitting at ringside. And I'm not sure how that's going to work, because even though that is pretty cool, I can't imagine that kid will be able to fit into those shoes for at least a little while. Plus, I don't even think the kid even cares because, well... And then we had a segment where Arn Anderson was outside of Cody Rhodes' house, and I thought for sure Arn was gonna cap him or something. But Arn started a fire in Cody's fire pit and asked Cody to hand over his suit and tie so he could burn it, and he said that Cody had gone Hollywood, which is not exactly untrue. And then he slapped Cody across the face, and I don't know what it was about this slap, but it just looked so funny to me, because it wasn't like a slap that came out of anger or anything that made it really dramatic. No, this was like a bitch slap, like a father disciplining his son. And it just looked so funny to me. But Arn told Cody that he threw them away. So I'm hoping this is going to lead to Cody Rhodes' heel turn or something, because I can just feel it. The more Cody just keeps getting fucked by guys like Malachi Black and his own advisor, Arn Anderson. And then we had a TNT title match between the TNT champion, Sammy Guevara, and Bobby Fish. And I was so excited for this match. And Bobby came out to the old Red Dragon theme, which I freaking loved. But at the end of the match, despite multiple near falls by Bobby Fish, Bobby would try to go for a roundhouse kick, but Guevara would duck it and hit Fish with the GTH for the win. And then after the match, Dan Lambert and Scorpio Sky came out with American Top Team and started beating down Sammy Guevara. But then Jericho and Hager came out to help their Inner Circle member, and Dan Lambert and American Top Team retreated. And then Dan Lambert laid down the challenge of a trios match between the team of Sammy Guevara, Chris Jericho, and Jake Hager against the team of the Men of the Year and Junior Dos Santos with Jorge Masvidal at ringside. And then Tony Schiavone was in the ring with Aubrey Edwards, and they announced a new AEW Women's Championship called the TBS Championship to celebrate their move to TBS. And to be honest, when they started talking about the move to TBS, I jokingly thought that they were going to make a TBS Championship, and I didn't think they were actually going to do it because it just sounded really stupid, but they actually did it, and it looked pretty much exactly how I thought it would, which is pretty much just a copy of the TNT Championship. And they said that they would determine the inaugural TBS champion in a women's tournament at the start of next year. And I think this is actually great, because I think the women's division needs another championship, and I think a mid-card championship for the women's division would be a great step forward. And then Darby Allin faced off against Nick Comoroto of The Factory, and there was a really weird point during the match when we got back from a commercial break and Darby Allin got the win right afterwards with a coffin drop, and it just felt so abrupt. And then after the match, QT Marshall came up from behind Sting and hit him with a diamond cutter, but Sting no-sold it like he did when he got put through the table and hit QT with the low blow and then finished off the segment with the Scorpion Death Drop. And then the Dark Order were backstage, and basically they made their reunion official, and they all agreed that they were on the same page now. And then Dante Martin was in the ring with Tony Schiavone, and he said that he would fight anyone in the AEW locker room, and they tried to hype up Dante Martin, but I've been saying time and time again that you can't hype up this guy as being your next up-and-coming star when he's been eating pins every week and made to look like a geek. And sure enough, they did it to him again this week when the arena lights went off, and when they came back on, Malachi Black was standing behind Dante, and he blew the black mist at Dante Martin's face and hit him with his spinning heel kick. And then Malachi Black accepted Dante's challenge. And I can't imagine that Dante is going to be the one that stops Malachi Black's path of destruction. So this is probably just going to end in him getting fed to another person. So that's great. And then FTW World Champion Ricky Starks was in the ring, and he challenged Brian Cage to a Philly street fight. And I'm honestly just hoping that after this street fight, Brian Cage can branch off on his own, because I thought he was done with this Team Taz stuff a long time ago. But Cage's music hit, and he came down to the ring and started attacking Starks, and then Will Hobbs and Hook pulled Starks out of the ring and saved him from Brian Cage. And then Hikaru Shida looked to get her 50th win against Serena Deeb. And I have to talk about AEW's production for a second, because there was one point during the match where one of the women, I can't remember who, hit a neck breaker on the other, and one of the commentators was calling it, and he was cut off mid-sentence with a commercial break. And I get that AEW is still only in its second year, but I know there are guys who worked on WrestleManias in your production truck, so I can't imagine why we're getting stuff like this, like commentators getting cut off mid-sentence by commercial breaks. And another thing that I thought was kind of weird was the fact that they had Shida's 50th win trophy already made, because I thought that was just going to spoil the ending to the match where Shida would win, because otherwise why would they make a trophy already? But interestingly, Deeb raked Shida's eyes and then hit her with the Deeb Tox for a near fall, and then transitioned straight into a Serenity Lock to submit Shida. And then after the match, Deeb took Shida's trophy and cracked her over the head with it. So initially, I thought this was kind of dumb, because I didn't understand why they would make a trophy before she had even gotten her 50th win. But now, I honestly kind of like the idea of Shida chasing after this trophy. And then Alex Marvez interviewed Darby Allin in a parking lot, and once I saw this, I knew immediately that we were going to have a backstage brawl. But before that, Darby was asked if he accepted MJF's challenge for a match next week on Dynamite, and Darby said yes, and then a limo pulled up in front of Darby, and a bunch of masked men attacked him, and they threw him into a stop sign, and one of the guys hit Darby with an F10 onto a bunch of barricades, and from that, you could figure out it was Wardlow and the other members of MJF's group, The Pinnacle. And MJF came up with Darby's skateboard and pressed it against his throat and left him laying. And we found out later in the night that Darby was not medically cleared to compete next week in MJF's match. So I imagine MJF is probably going to come out next week and try to get a forfeit win. But Darby might come out super injured, or somebody's going to step up in his place. I don't know. We'll see. It's probably going to be one of the two, though. And then Lio Rush was backstage, and he said that he wanted to manage Dante Martin, and I was getting horrible flashbacks to the Bobby Lashley-Lio Rush partnership. But to be honest, I think Dante Martin actually might need a manager, because he's honestly not doing super well on his own, and he might actually become that breakout star that everybody thinks he's going to become with Lio Rush at his side. And then we had our main event, which was the Casino ladder match to determine the #1 contender to the AEW world title. And when I first saw the makings of this match, I knew immediately how this was going to go. This was honestly super predictable. I think the first time I saw it, Andrade El Idolo, Pac, Jon Moxley, and Lance Archer were already announced. And I said to myself, okay, well, we got two rivalries right there that are going to prevent any of the men from winning the match. So with 2 spots left and a Joker, I imagine it's going to be another rivalry, which I was right about because it was Orange Cassidy and Matt Hardy, and they were obviously going to prevent each other from winning the match too. And I said that the Joker was going to be Adam Page, who would be making his return after having his baby and losing his AEW World Championship match at All Out. And sure enough, I was right. Adam Page came out at the Joker spot and got a huge pop. Like, I think they were actually booing Moxley over Page, which is pretty ridiculous because Moxley has always been one of the top baby faces in the company. But there were some pretty cool spots. There was a part where Page and Pac were battling on top of the ladder next to a table, and I thought to myself, what if Page just hit a deadeye on Pac off the ladder through the table? But I thought there was no way that could happen because when you land on a deadeye, you land really high on your shoulders and neck. So I thought it would be way too dangerous to do off a ladder. But the motherfucker did it. And there was another point where Hardy paid tribute to his brother Jeff, which I thought was pretty cool, and he hit his extreme leg drop off the ladder onto Orange through a table. But at the end, Mox and Hangman were at the top of the ladder, and Mox dropped off, and Page grabbed the poker chip and won the match and a future AEW World Championship match against Kenny Omega, which I assume is going to take place at Full Gear. And I remember back when he lost his right to challenge for the AEW World Championship when they had that elimination match with the Dark Order and the Elite. I remember a bunch of people saying that they were not happy with Page being out of the World Championship match at All Out, but I figured to trust AEW that they knew what they were doing, and turns out they did because they had some long-term storytelling plans, and now I assume Page is probably going to take the belt off of Omega, and from there we could start transitioning the belt towards other stars like Bryan Danielson and CM Punk and Adam Cole. But we'll see what happens, and if they do end up having Adam Page beat Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship, honestly, that's some pretty good long-term storytelling. So next week, we're going to have Dynamite on Saturday, and we're also going to have Rampage this Friday with a bunch of cool matches, so we'll check that out when the time comes.